How many English noun rules do you know? If you know all 100 noun rules in this video, that's stunning. And you're probably an advanced English speaker. Let's begin with noun phrases. And the basic rules. We always start with one word. For example, phone. But we can add more words to this noun to give extra information. For example, it's not just a phone, but black phone. This tells us the colour. This is an adjective. And we can also add determiners. For example, this black phone. It's not any phone, but the one we can see here. It's this one. A special type of determiner is an article. A black phone means one of many black phones. It's not specific at all. And we can also use possessive words. It's not just any black phone, it's my black phone. It belongs to me. Now let's move on to the advanced rules. These can go after a noun to describe it more. A preposition phrase. A phone in my pocket. In my pocket is a preposition phrase that tells us where the phone is, and that comes after the noun. We can also use relative clauses. A phone which I bought online. A relative clause is made of a relative pronoun like which, that, where, when or who, and then a clause afterwards, and we use that to add information about a whole clause that describes the noun. Or we could use a to plus infinitive clause. A good phone to have is an iPhone. And you're not just limited to one of these phrases. You can have multiple phrases after a noun describing that noun, particularly preposition phrases. Look at the example at the bottom. A phone which I bought online in a shop by the bank on the corner of the street. 4 different preposition phrases, all added together next to each other to provide extra information about the noun phone. There are some other advanced rules too. You can use nouns as adjectives as well. I've got a phone, but it's actually a Samsung phone. Samsung is a noun, it's a proper noun, but we can use it before the phone like an adjective to tell us more about the phone. And we can join nouns together so that we make one new noun. For example, in the USA, they call it a cell phone. Now, cell is an individual word and phone is an individual word, and you join them together to make a new word. You can also have a compound noun where the nouns are not joined but apart. Some dictionaries say cell phone with the 2 words separated and not together. And the reason I've done this is because the rules for making compound nouns are very varied and you have to learn them one by one. Sometimes a word is used in some places together as 2 nouns joined as one, and sometimes they're kept apart. Sometimes there's more than one option for you. A further option is to use hyphens, and this is particularly common when we add 3 or more words together to make that compound noun. Now let's move on to noun position. What are the different positions that you can put a noun in? Let's start off with the basic rules. First of all, nouns can go in what's called the subject position. That's at the beginning of the sentence before the verb. This makes the subject, the noun, the most important word in the sentence. And what comes afterwards is all about this subject. For example, my book has 200 pages. But a noun could also go after the verb in the object position. For example, I have read the book. And in this type of sentence, the book is the receiver of the activity. I do the activity is reading. What do I read? The book. And we can also use nouns as complements. Now this is where it goes after the verb and it describes the subject. So this is a book. Here the information order goes backwards. A book describes this. So here it's not receiving an action, it's telling us more about the subject. And also in a preposition phrase. I learnt a lot from this book. From this book is a preposition phrase from the preposition and then the noun phrase this book. Other basic rules include where we have 2 objects. For example, I gave her a book. Here we have 2 objects. We have a book and we have her. A book is the direct object. This receives the action. What do we give? A book. That's how we know what the direct option is, because it receives the action of the verb. But then we have this second noun, the indirect object, and this receives the direct object. I gave her a book. Who received the book? Her. The order can change by using to or for. For instance, I gave a book to her. It means exactly the same as I gave her a book, but now the book comes first. The book comes after gave, and her comes at the end, joined with to. To shows the direction. The book goes to her. Also for. I bought flowers for her. For means the intended recipient. This is who was supposed to receive the flowers. There are some advanced rules of noun position too. Sometimes we put the noun at the beginning of a sentence followed by a comma when we mean direct address. For instance, Tom, pass the book. Here we have an instruction, pass the book. Tom is the person the instruction is directed towards. So he goes at the start of the sentence before a comma. Also, we have this structure, noun followed by of followed by noun, which is quite common in English. So we have two nouns together separated by of. For example, a pile of books was placed upon the table. This is a kind of alternative possessive form. A pile of books, in a way, this is how we describe the books. But we use this structure instead. And I'll explain how to choose between a possessive form and this noun of noun form in a moment. But first, let's turn to action nouns. With action nouns, we're talking about this. In some sentences, the noun carries the action, not the verb. And this is common with the following verbs. For instance, with the verb hear, they heard a noise. Now, what's the real action here? Well, the action is the noise. When you hear, information simply goes into your ear. You're not doing anything. But the noise is an action created by someone else. It's similar in the next example. I need a shower. When we say I need a shower, the action is the shower. The shower is the activity. Need simply links the action back to the subject. Also with have. Because I've had a run. A run is the activity, not have. Take. Let's take a trip. Make. Please make an effort. An effort is the action here. And give. Give it a try. When you try something, you're making an effort, and that's an action. Also do. They have done research. These scientists did an action, but the action was research. Research was their action. And here it's in the form of a noun. Now, there are thousands of other English rules to learn, and you can find lots of them on my Perfect English Grammar course. For more details, click the link in the video description below this video here. Now let's move back to possessives. What are possessives? When do we use them? And when do we choose between the general possessive form and that noun of noun form? Well, let's start with the basics. Possessives show that a noun belongs to someone or something. For instance, my sister's husband. The husband belongs to my sister. Now, I'm talking about only one sister here. And when there's only one, we add apostrophe S at the end in that order. In the next example, I'm talking about my parents' house. But I've got two parents. So here there's a change because parents is plural. Here we go S apostrophe instead to show that the house belongs to my parents. There are lots of irregular forms with plurals though, and when we have irregular plural possessives, then we add apostrophe S like it's a singular. So my children's tree house has apostrophe S, not S apostrophe even though there's more than one child. Pronouns, of course, have their own possessive forms. My, mine, your, yours, and so on. But there are advanced rules for possessives too. What do you do if a noun ends with an S? Well, in most cases, if it's singular, you still place the apostrophe before the next S. But if you're talking about older nouns that come from older examples of English, then sometimes we don't add that extra S. For example, Jesus' followers eat bread and wine. Here, the possessive form is simply indicated by the apostrophe after the S. And some abstract concepts such as time can be possessive too. For example, a week's work, now that's apostrophe S because a week is singular here, or 2 weeks' wages, and here it's S apostrophe because here there's more than 1 week. For the next set of advanced rules, let's return to that difference between the possessive form and the noun of noun form. Sometimes we can choose between them. For example, the author's name or the name of the author. Now, both could be used, but there are some tendencies in English to be aware of. A possessive form is more commonly preferred for people. So the patient's leg is broken. It's very unlikely that we would say the leg of the patient is broken. Normally, English speakers do it this way with the apostrophe S form. Also, when we talk about animals, the dog's teeth are very sharp. It's very unlikely that we would say the teeth of the dog are very sharp. That's not the normal way that we speak. But there are other situations where noun of noun is preferred. Let's look at some examples. Go to the end of the road. The end is one noun. The road is another noun connected by of. We wouldn't say go to the road's end. In other words, we don't want to give possession to something that can't receive possession. A road can't own its end. There are some occasions we do it, but we tend not to. We tend to avoid that apostrophe S possessive form for things that can't have possession and go to the noun of noun structure instead. Also, when the first noun means a part of the second noun, we'd usually use noun of noun then as well. So we'd say a slice of cake, not a cake slice. A drop of rain, not a rain's drop. Measurements are often number, hyphen, noun, and then noun. For instance, a 2-litre bottle of cola. So 2 litre tells us the measurement. So we have the amount of the measurement, the type of the measurement, joined it together with a hyphen. And then the noun is the thing that's being measured. Let's move on to another topic of nominalization. What do I mean by nominalization? Well, this is where verbs or other words can be turned into nouns with a sentence structure change. Compare the two examples. We suggested watching this video. In the first example, suggested, the words in red, suggested is a verb. We can rewrite this sentence, possibly to make it more formal, by switching suggested into its noun form suggestion. And we have to add an extra verb to make up for it because now we've lost the verb. So we could say this: we made a suggestion about watching this video. We can also do it with adjectives. Adjectives can also be turned into nouns. For instance, some parts of the video were difficult. Another way of saying this is the difficulty in some parts of the video was at a high level. So in the first example, difficult is an adjective, but we change it into its noun form, difficulty, when we rewrite it with nominalization. And this can be a way of making your writing feel more professional or more formal. What about gendered nouns? What do I mean by gendered nouns? Well, nouns that alter according to gender are becoming less used, but some are still accepted. This is where I change the word slightly depending on whether it's a man or a woman, a male or a female. Now, some words change completely, but other words simply change their endings. For instance, actress and actor. Actress is the female, actor is the male. Waitress and waiter is still often used. Hostess and host. Hostess is perhaps dying out a little bit. Sometimes people are just called host, but you may still hear this sometimes. Headmistress, headmaster. Again, this kind of usage is dying out, but people still use these terms. The person in charge of a school, if it's a male, is headmaster. If they're a female, headmistress. In royalty, these terms are still very much used. For example, duchess and duke, princess and prince. And if you're talking about the most important character in a play or a film, someone who does something extra special, heroine is the female, hero is the male. One of the most important things to get right in English is pluralization. Let's start off with some basic rules and then let's look at some advanced rules. So first of all, the subject and verb must agree. What do I mean by agree? What I mean is this. The film starts at 9 p.m, but the mountains overlook the city. Now remember that verbs in the present tense normally take an S at the end of the third person when they're singular and don't take an S at the end when they're plural. So in the first example, the film starts at 9 p.m. Starts is the singular form. And that agrees with the subject because it's a singular subject, the film. We're talking about only one film, a singular film. And a singular subject goes with a singular verb. But mountains is more than one. There's more than one mountain in the picture here. Overlook is the plural form of the verb. It doesn't have the S. And these two agree as well because we have a plural subject, mountains, and we have a plural verb, overlook. And this is what you must do with the subject and verb in the basic rules. Also, you add S to most singular nouns, but you add ES to most singular nouns already ending in S. So the mountains overlook the city. Well, this is the normal use. The word ended with an N, so just add an S afterwards. But glass is a word that already ends in S. So add ES at the end, not another S. We wouldn't have 3 S's in a row here. 4 glasses were placed on the table. Let's expand this a bit more as we go into the advanced rules. Noun and noun. So sometimes we join 2 nouns together as the subject and connect them with and. We could even do that with more. And when we connect the words with and, we consider them to be plural. The bus and the train arrive at the same time. Bus and the train, 2 nouns, plural. Arrive is the plural verb. It doesn't have the S at the end. But if it's noun or noun, we consider this singular. The bus or the train arrives with the S at the end, first depending upon which day it is. That is unless the nouns are already plural themselves. So the buses or the trains arrive later in the evening. So here if we have 2 plural nouns joined by or, we go back to using the plural verb. Now, what about these endings? Well, sometimes with a Y, we'll add IES. So granny becomes grannies, take away the Y, add the IES. There's a range of sounds where we add ES at the end. So SH, SS, CH, X and Z all take ES at the end. So a search is 1, 2 searches, add ES, not an S because it's a CH ending. Now, if you know anything about Latin, you will be helped here because many centuries ago, Latin got into the English language. Now, most of it has gone in the direct form, but in certain areas, particularly subject-specific areas, we've held on to some of these Latin words. And these Latin words change into plurals in different ways. For example, vertebra becomes vertebrae. Now, these are the bones in the back of your body that go from your head down to your waist, your backbone. We normally just say vertebrae because they normally come together. But if you're looking at just one individual part of the bones, it will be vertebra. Now, US can often become I with these Latin-derived words. So nucleus, which is part of what makes an atom up in science, if you know about science. If we turn it into the plural, we will have nuclei. Nucleus, nuclei. Becomes a. Now, there's a few words where this is more common, particularly in education. Curriculum is still used a lot in English. That's one set of instructions or one plan for how an education program will work. But if we have more than one, we'll go to curricula. And then something that doesn't come from Latin is a particular rule. When we have double O, some words change to double E in the plural. So goose becomes geese. These are some of the most common pluralization rules. There are more than this. For instance, where an F turns to VES, but it doesn't always do it. So there are more rules than this, but this covers some of the main ones that you'll come across. Some words are always plural as well. When two things always exist, we'll tend to keep the word in the plural form. For example, pants. Now, because there are two legs, there's always two holes or gaps in this clothing, so we consider it to be always plural. We never say a pant. If you said a pant, it would only apply to one leg. That wouldn't be any use. We always have two legs that are filled. So we have pants. Now, pants refers to underwear in Britain, but trousers in America. So be aware of that difference too. And we use this for lots of things. Glasses, binoculars, anything where there are two parts of the body where you put something over or use something with, we will make them always plural. Also, when what is left is incomplete. Have a look at this structure here. Perhaps this was an old castle, but now it's fallen down. And we could call this remains or ruins. But we'd never say the remain of the castle. It's always the remains of the castle can be seen in the distance. Let's quickly look at something called appositive nouns. And this is a special use of nouns where a noun or a noun phrase is inserted after another noun to provide additional definition. It's a little bit like a clause inserted after a noun, but in this case it's just a noun phrase on its own. Look at the example here. The actress, a popular role model in her own country, wrote a book on life skills. Now here, a popular role model in her own country is a noun phrase. There's no verb in there. Role model is the main noun, a compound noun joining role and model. We have popular as the adjective, a as the article, in her own country is the preposition phrase. So we have the main noun with some bits before, some bits after to make the noun phrase. And all of that describes the actress. How do we know it's an appositive noun? It's in commas immediately after the noun it describes. So instead of adding relative clauses or preposition phrases or a to plus infinitive to give information after a noun, we can use this appositive noun, commas, noun in the middle. It describes the noun before. Nouns become complicated when we talk about countable nouns and uncountable nouns, or sometimes we just say count and uncount. At a basic level, the rules are this, and that is that most words can be counted. 1 cup, 2 cups, 3 cups, 4 cups, 5 cups. And when we count them, we generally go from a singular form cup to the plural form with an S at the end. But some words are not usually counted, and these are called uncountable, such as liquids. Would you like milk? Not 2 milks, 3 milks, 4 milks, 5 milks, but milk just as one noun. Also, abstract nouns, nouns that we can't see but we can imagine. I never have any luck. Look at this poor man, things going wrong for him. Luck we can't see it, it's abstract. It's just something that we think about. Also concept nouns. So these are like abstract nouns, but they describe something specific that's perhaps an umbrella term for more things. So do you like science? Now, it's not do you like two sciences. We just say science because we mean all of science all together. And some things are measured by volume simply because there's too much of them. Sometimes we call these mass nouns, like rice. How much rice is there? It just would be too difficult to count 1 rice, 2 rice, 3 rice, 4 rice, 5 rice. Just call it all rice. It makes it easier. And these are uncountable or uncount. At an advanced level, you need to know that some collective nouns are uncountable, but some are not. They vary from noun to noun. So cutlery, that describes all of the things you use to eat. So in terms of the things you use to put things in your mouth. So knives, forks, spoons, add them together, we call them cutlery. There's 3 pieces, but we still just call it cutlery. We don't say 3 cutleries. We just say cutlery. But with chairs, it's different. We've got 3 chairs and we count them. 1, 2, 3. We wouldn't say his chair. We say his 3 chairs. So words work differently depending on what they are. Many weather types are uncountable, but a few can be counted. So look at the snow. We'd never say look at the 1,000 snows. Just look at the snow. But look at the clouds. Now, we can count clouds if they are individual in the sky. If the whole sky is covered in cloud, then no, it's uncountable. But if we just have different clouds, then it is countable. And some adjectives become nouns by adding nes to them, and these tend to be uncountable too. So they are happy. Happy is an adjective. Turn it into a noun. There's a lot of happiness today. We wouldn't say 3 happinesses, just happiness. And here's some more advanced rules on count and uncount. Many major illnesses or conditions are uncountable. So things such as flu, asthma, we wouldn't say she has 3 asthmas, or I have 2 flus, or in the group there are 5 asthmas. We'd just say asthma and flu. But with headaches, if more than one person has a headache, then you would make it plural. That's the difference. So the words in red here stay countable. It has given us some headaches. We wouldn't say there's a lot of headache in the class. We would say headaches. Now, much and little tend to be uncountable. That's when they're determiners, that is, and many and few are countable. So there isn't much water in the pond. That's uncountable, but there aren't many visitors at the zoo. Visitors here is countable, so use many. Bear in mind with little, little can be an adjective too, and in this case it doesn't affect the noun. If you see some boys and you think that they're quite little, would say they are little boys. Little does not make the boys uncountable. That's different because little there is an adjective. And finally, these and this could both be countable, but this is uncountable, whereas these is not. So this book or these books, this book is one, these books is many. But information is uncountable, so only use this, don't use these. And here are some groups of nouns that are countable or uncountable depending upon context. For example, with animals, if you are referring to the animal specifically, make it countable, for example, 10 chickens. Or food from animals is uncountable, usually. I'm eating chicken. Even though you can see more than one piece of chicken in the picture, it's all chicken because it's the food we eat. Now, mental concepts are usually uncountable, like sensitivity. But if you add an adjective before it, then it becomes countable in many situations. So I have a special sensitivity. By adding special, we turn it into something you can count. A special sensitivity. But if we don't do that, then generally it stays uncountable. They are showing me a lot of sensitivity. Here, sensitivity is uncountable. And uncountables can sometimes become countable when described as a type of. For instance, I sometimes eat meat. Remember, when we talk about the food that comes from animals, it's usually uncountable. But look at the next example. This is a meat that you can't find in the supermarkets. This type of meat is different to all other types of meat. And by using a in front of it, we make it countable to mean just this type. Move on to the next one. When uncountable nouns describe another countable noun, the phrase still can be counted. The uncountable noun doesn't make the whole thing uncountable. So I've eaten rice. We know that rice is uncountable. But if rice is describing cake, then it becomes countable. I've eaten 2 rice cakes. The rice does not make the cake uncountable. One important rule in English is that we can add little words at the end of nouns to indicate that they are nouns. Now, sometimes we have words where there is a verb form, an adjective form, and a noun form. How do we use the right one? Well, typically we need to know certain endings that tell us which one is the noun, which one is the verb, which one is the adjective. And I'm going to go through some of the main rules now. So some letters at the end of the word often indicate it is a noun. And before I go through them all, please remember these are not final rules for everything. There are exceptions. Some of these endings are occasionally found in verbs and adjectives. What I'm doing here is I'm showing you the tendency, what normally indicates a noun by what comes at the end. First of all, ANCE. For example, guidance. ANCE is normally a suffix meaning the letters at the end of a word, which has the common meaning of quality or process. So this takes the process meaning. Guidance is a form of a process. EE often comes at the end of the word to mean a lower level role. So employee is below the employer. The employer is responsible for the employee. The employee receives the role from the employer. And this works with a number of nouns. Also, hood. Hood often indicates stage of life. Parenthood, childhood, adulthood. Many words with hood are nouns for a particular stage of life. Ist basically means they do this. If you're a capitalist, then you are someone who believes in a certain economic system, which we describe as capitalism, and you do it as well. If you add ness to the end of an adjective, this is simply to quantify the adjective. So careless is an adjective, meaning that you don't pay particular care for something. But ness turns it into this noun form. It turns the adjective into a noun by saying the subject of careless or being careless. OR or ER can be used for occupations. So a farmer, well, this is someone who works on a farm. You add ER to the end of farm to give the occupation for someone who works on the farm. And ship is often used when you're joining something or a particular role you have. So if you get citizenship in a certain country, you're joining that country. There's a number of other noun suffixes that don't have specific meanings, but are often used simply to indicate that something is a noun, with exceptions, as I mentioned. So ISM, ageism, is an example. SION, tension. TION, nation. ANT, coolant. DOM, kingdom. AL, arrival. AGE, image. MENT, payment. All of those suffixes often, not always, indicate a noun. Well, now let's turn to these letters that go at the beginning of a noun. And with noun prefixes, prefixes meaning letters that go at the beginning of a word, I'm going to introduce a number of prefixes that can go before nouns. But with prefixes, there's even more flexibility. So some of the prefixes I will show you here, go before nouns, but they can also go before other types of words. It's the meaning that they communicate, which is important to grasp here. So some letters at the start of a word add meanings to nouns in this way. First of all, anti. This means opposite or against something. So antibiotics. This means against biotics, basically against the things that are hurting your body. Auto means self. So an automotive is a vehicle that you drive yourself. Bi means two of something. So a bicycle is a cycle with two wheels. De often means remove. So declassification means you remove something from being classified. Dis often means not. So disagreement means there's not an agreement. Mega means very large, like a mega store, a very, very big store. Miss could generally be described as an error of some sort. So misinformation means the information given had an error. And non means not. So if you say non-fiction, then it means it's not fiction. It's the opposite of fiction. It doesn't have fiction in it. Over means too much. Overestimation means the estimate was too much. Would you like some more? If you'd like some more, here are some bonus prefixes for you. Post means after. So post more means after the war. But pre means before. Preview means you view it before something else. Maybe you preview a film before it goes to the cinema. Re means again. Reapplication means you apply for something another time, a second time. Again, you've already done it. Semi means half, like a semicircle. Super means more than something. So a superhero is something more than a hero, even greater. The way in which something is more varies, but it does mean more than something else. Tele comes from long transmission. So telescope is where you look into the sky for something far away. We also have television, which means receiving a signal from a long way away. And tele tends to have this meaning. Tri means three of something, like a triangle has three sides. Uni means one of something. Universe means one whole area of space that we are aware of. It just means one. And under means less than. Under goes with an underestimate.